Everyone owns one of these 5 backpacks. That's the problem. Recognizable logos don't mean real trekking performance. Some of these are daypacks in disguise. Here is what's actually failing you and what to buy instead. Coleman. Coleman built its name on tents, coolers, and stoves that survive a decade of abuse. And that reputation quietly gets transferred onto products it has no business covering, like backpacking packs. The assumption is that a company this trusted in one category must be competent in an adjacent one. It isn't. Long-term buyers describe a consistent failure pattern rather than isolated bad units. Hardware gives out first, with zippers cited repeatedly as the earliest point of failure, followed by mesh side pockets tearing directly along the seams where the fabric is under the most stress. One long-time buyer put it about as plainly as possible, saying the packs do work, but they won't last, and the zippers fail pretty quick too, which is a fairly damning review from someone who actually wanted to like the product. Testers have also flagged a persistent squeak with every step, one that adjusting the straps does nothing to fix, which suggests the noise is coming from the frame or hardware itself rather than user error. A pack that announces its own decline with sound effects isn't a minor annoyance, it's an early warning system. None of this makes Coleman a bad company. It makes it the wrong company for this specific product. These packs are built for the drive-up, unload the trunk, pitch a tent 20 feet from the car style of camping, where the bag spends 90% of the trip sitting untouched. Ask it to carry real weight over real mileage day after day, and it starts falling apart before the trip itself does. Herschel sells an aesthetic, and it sells it extremely well. Waxed canvas, leather strap accents, a 2-stripe logo that looks deliberate on a cafe table. What it does not sell, even in its flagship models, is a sternum strap or a hip belt, and there is no attachment point to retrofit either one later. This isn't a minor spec gap, it's a structural decision that defines what the bag can and cannot do. A hip belt exists to transfer a loaded pack's weight off the shoulders and onto the pelvis, which is the only reason a heavy pack doesn't wreck your back and shoulders within a few hours of continuous wear. Without one, the entire load, food, water, shelter, layers, hangs from 2 thin straps resting on your collarbones, which were never designed to be a load-bearing structure for multi-day weight. Reviewers who've actually tested the flagship Little America pack for travel note it performs fine as a daily carry or short trip bag, but that's precisely the ceiling. Daily carry. It was designed for someone walking a few blocks with a laptop, not someone hauling 40 pounds of gear across uneven terrain for 3 days straight. The brand isn't failing at what it set out to build. The failure is entirely on the buyer's end, mistaking a lifestyle bag for trekking equipment because the marketing photography includes a lot of forests. JanSport's reputation is inherited from a version of the company that no longer exists. Decades ago, JanSport made genuinely serious backpacking-specific packs. The D3 and the Rainier weren't gimmicks. They were proper internal frame packs with real suspension systems, built during an era when the brand was competing directly with dedicated outdoor manufacturers. Both models have been discontinued for years. What currently occupies shelf space under the JanSport name is the school and commute lineup. Flat-backed day packs, engineered for textbooks and laptops, with no internal frame and no suspension system to speak of. A suspension system is the internal structure, usually a frame sheet or stays, that keeps a loaded pack rigid and directs weight downward onto the hips instead of letting the bag sag and drag on the shoulders. Without one, weight distribution becomes entirely dependent on how carefully you pack, and even then, it never gets redirected to where your body can actually handle it. This is the brand equivalent of buying a car because the manufacturer made great engines in the 90s without checking whether they still do. JanSport hasn't gotten worse at backpacking packs. It's stopped making them, full stop, while keeping the logo that still implies otherwise. The North Face Borealis and Recon lines. To be fair, The North Face absolutely makes legitimate trekking packs with real suspension systems, but they are just not the ones anyone is actually buying. The Borealis and Recon dominate sales precisely because they are day packs with a hip belt bolted on, which is arguably worse than having no hip belt at all, since it creates the illusion of proper support where none really exists. Reviewers examining the Borealis specifically point out that the hip belt sits pretty high up on the stomach rather than the waist, and does not have any comfortable padding, meaning it is positioned wrong and cushioned poorly, a combination that fails at the one job a hip belt has. On a 2-hour walk with a half-empty bag, this is irrelevant. Nobody notices a hip belt when there is nothing to transfer. 20 miles into a multi-day trek, fully loaded, that positioning becomes the difference between weight properly resting on the hips and weight pressing a thin strap into a stomach that was never meant to bear it. The result is not just discomfort, it is a bruise that gets worse every day of the trip, with no way to adjust it into a position that fixes the problem, because the flaw is in the design, not the fit. SwissGear Wenger. SwissGear leans hard on the Swiss Army Knife Association, and the branding does a lot of heavy lifting for a company that primarily makes laptop bags and airport carry-ons, not backcountry equipment. The durability complaints aren't scattered, one-off gripes. They follow a repeatable pattern across multiple users and multiple product cycles. One long-term user reported the shoulder strap seams kept opening across several replacement units, meaning the company's own warranty replacements failed the same way as the original. A Trustpilot reviewer separately described stitching unraveling and grommets, the metal reinforced eyelets that straps clip through, falling out entirely within months of only moderate use. When a failure mode repeats itself across different buyers, different units, and different timeframes, that's not bad luck. That's a structural defect baked into the manufacturing. A pack failing at the seams isn't a cosmetic issue either. It's the strap system itself coming apart while it's holding your gear. On day 4 of a trek, that's not an inconvenience you work around. That's the trip ending early, several miles from the trailhead, with a bag that's failed at the one job it had. Osprey. Osprey earns the reputation the previous 5 brands are borrowing without doing the work. The almighty guarantee is the clearest signal of confidence a gear company can offer. Osprey will repair or replace any pack, regardless of age, which only makes financial sense if the company already knows its failure rate is low enough to absorb the cost. That's not a marketing gimmick, it's a bet the company is willing to make on its own manufacturing. The Atmos and Aura AG lines consistently top independent comfort and load transfer testing, meaning the weight is actually being redirected to the hips the way the suspension system is supposed to, rather than staying stacked on the shoulders like it does with the day packs in disguise covered above. This is the brand that comes up in nearly every serious "what pack should I actually buy" conversation, and it comes up for boring, unglamorous reasons. It keeps performing after the honeymoon period, after mile 10, after the pack has been rained on and dropped and packed wrong a few times. That's the only kind of review that actually matters for equipment you're trusting with multi-day trips. Gregory. The Gregory, Paragon and Maven are currently rated the best all-around backpacking packs by multiple independent gear outlets, and the reasoning behind that ranking is consistent across reviewers, rather than dependent on one glowing write-up. Comfort holds up over long distances instead of degrading after the first few hours. Durability survives testers putting over 1,000 miles on the same pack, which is a genuinely brutal test that most gear never gets subjected to. The suspension system carries load effectively even when the pack is maxed out at capacity, which is exactly the condition under which cheaper packs, like several already covered, start failing. Gregory isn't selling a heritage story or a recognizable logo. It's building packs that keep performing after the initial impression wears off, which is a much harder thing to fake than good marketing photography. Deuter and Hyperlite Mountain Gear. Pick based on style, because both solve the same underlying problem from opposite directions. Deuter is the German trekking specialist with decades of suspension system engineering specifically for European alpine and multi-day trekking conditions. and it shows up repeatedly as the trusted mid to premium choice for people who want proven design over trend chasing. Hyperlite Mountain Gear goes the other direction entirely. Ultralight, boutique, built from Dyneema, a fabric that's fully waterproof and considered one of the toughest, most reliable materials available in ultralight gear, despite weighing a fraction of standard pack fabric. It's a favorite specifically among thru hikers, the people counting individual grams over a 1,000-mile trip and still refusing to compromise on durability, which tells you everything about how the material actually performs under sustained abuse. Either brand solves the exact problem the first 5 never could. If you've been burned by boots the same way you've been burned by backpacks, the next video breaks it down. Check out the video titled 8 Walking Boot Brands You're Overpaying For, 3 Actually Worth It, for the full rundown.